on Fridays. I'm Al McCauley, and if you love a good cup of coffee in the morning or throughout your day, this episode is for you because I want to talk to you about the patron saint of baristas and coffee lovers everywhere. Now, you may know this if you watch Fish on Fridays on a regular basis. I have done an episode in the past about coffee, believe it or not, in the Catholic Connection. How in the 16th century, coffee was outlawed as a beverage to be enjoyed by Catholics until Pope Clement VIII blessed it and said it was okay for the faithful to drink of it. Now, I won't go into greater detail than that, but I will encourage you to look into our archives and check that episode out because it's a good one, especially if you like coffee. But I want to talk to you today, again, like I said, the patron saint of coffee drinkers, of coffee lovers, and baristas. And his name is Saint Drogo, and his feast day is April 16th every year. Now, most people don't know of this guy. They don't know why he's the patron saint of coffee. And, even after this episode, you might question. It's kind of a loose connection. But nonetheless, it exists. And I'll tell you his story. But he's become more popular within the last decade or two, especially because there's been an uptick in love of coffee. Who doesn't love coffee? And it's become more and more prominent in our culture, I'd say. There's coffee at everything, church events, and you can't go anywhere without wanting to stop and run through to get a cup of coffee somewhere or a latte or something. Even the company Tiny Saints, which I've talked about in the past, has a little charm with his likeness on it. You can see him holding his little cup of coffee. There's a little mug. So who is this guy? Who is this Saint Drogo? Well, he was a 12th century Frenchman, and his mom died while she gave birth to him. And unfortunately for Drogo, his dad's going to die very shortly after that. So he's going to be orphaned at a pretty young age. And if that wasn't bad enough, he's going to suffer from a disfiguring hernia, an incredibly painful hernia. In fact, it was so bad that when he was born, the part of his bowels were outside of his body. And so it was something that he had to deal with his whole life. Can you imagine the pain of that and how it would look and the being made fun of and the object of scorn, etc. And again, if that wasn't enough, he suffered from unsightly blemishes of the skin, and it got worse the older he got. And so it's unfortunate, but you can kind of see why he ended up living the way he did. He became a hermit. Now, he didn't become a hermit to escape from the world, however. He became a hermit because of his great faith. He wanted to live a life in prayer and solitude that he could dedicate to Christ. And so he did that. In fact, he lived for up to 40 years in a little cell that was attached to a church. And what he did was he would tend sheep. He would leave the cell to tend sheep. He was a shepherd. So sometimes you see him portrayed in art. You'll see him holding a shepherd's hook or holding a sheep or with sheep in a pasture or whatever the case is, because he was a shepherd. But when he wasn't dealing with the sheep, he was in his little cell and he was praying and he was contemplating, and he was somebody who became thought of as a wise man. And as is the case with people who are oftentimes hermits like this, they're sought out. People will go to him and want to ask him for his counsel, for his guidance, and they want him to give them some kind of blessing or what have you. Now, in this 40-year period of time that Drogo is inhabiting this cell, he doesn't have a lot of luxuries, and so he is known to go through prolonged fasts. In fact, it was said that he subsisted for years on nothing more than communion hosts and a barley water mixture that he drank from a cup. It was this like a stewed barley water mixture that would be warm, and he would drink it. And because he had this cup in his hand of this hot mixture, this hot beverage in his hand, it was assumed that he was drinking coffee. And so he became synonymous with coffee drinkers. So there's the connection. I would suggest it's a loose connection, but it's there nonetheless, that he is the patron saint of coffee drinkers because of this warm, barley, watery thing that he was to drink to live on. Despite his physical appearance, despite the pain he suffered and endured, he also is known as the patron saint of unattractive people because of all of the things he had to put up with, the physical ailments and stuff. But despite all that, despite the chronic pain, he prayed, he lived his faith, and he lived it, I would say, heroically. He never turned anybody away when they came to seek counsel from him. He was always very hospitable. And so I think it's an important lesson for us. There's 2 or 3. Not to let your physical limitations hold you back, especially in the area of your faith. Don't give in to, I look bad or I feel bad, and so that's going to somehow limit your faith. To the extent that you can, pray through those moments and be an example for others so that they may seek you out for your counsel. Who knows? But the other thing I would think about is this. If you think about how we use coffee in our modern sense, coffee is used as a conversation starter. One of my best friends from high school, Dave, and I get together about once a month. We have for years, but just to get together and talk. How's the family? We'll talk about the church. We'll talk about any of the things that are going on in our lives. And we always do it at a coffee shop. So there's something about a cup of coffee that can bring 2 people together. And I would suggest to you, how do you use coffee? Is it something you just need to get through your day, a little caffeine jolt, or can it be a source of conversation? Can it be a conduit of conversion or counseling for somebody else? If someone is struggling, say, hey, let's meet for coffee somewhere and talk about things, see how things are going. Just words, to think of, something to think about and possibly take to prayer to consider doing, but to go out of your comfort zone a little bit, to offer that hand, that fellowship to somebody else over a cup of coffee might be what they need, and it might be what you need and your soul needs. So anyway, St. Drogo, patron saint of coffee drinkers. Next time you have a latte or a cappuccino or a cup of joe, maybe say a prayer of thanksgiving that Drogo gave us this great example of humility, of perseverance through pain, and faithfulness in his love of God. So there you go. If you'd like to share this content, that would be great. We'd love it, maybe with a coffee lover. We'd love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on Facebook. But either way, we hope you keep tuning in every Friday for Fish on Fridays. Until next time, please be good to each other, and God bless.